Welcome to The Inside Track, where we talk all things health, healthcare and medical insurance. Brought to you by TRA and our team of Warren, Alan and Doc Avron. Let's sit back and see what our team has for us today.
Hi everyone, this is our sixth podcast in the Inside Track series, and we know today's topic is sure to raise all sorts of different opinion amongst our viewers. In fact, there's so much to cover that there will be a two-part series on this topic we're going to cover. Doc Avron, what are we talking about?
So I've had a lot of inquiries about this topic, and I'm really excited to having interviewed Dr. Anton Janse van Rensburg, who's actually an expert in South Africa, and not many in South Africa, but an expert in medicinal cannabis. And that's a growing field. It's still relatively small in South Africa, but it is a very important field, and it's important our listeners understand. And I had a really good discussion with Dr. van Rensburg, who really explained in this episode what is medicinal cannabis, how have we got to where we are, and what are the uses that one can actually use medicinal cannabis. Fascinating. And Dr. Anton Janse van Rensburg, who also, by the way, lectures other doctors, and runs courses for other doctors in terms of how to prescribe it. He's very, very well versed and expert in the field, and it was actually a privilege interviewing him.
Great. Let's take a look.
And we have a very special guest today, Dr. Anton Janse van Rensburg. Welcome to our show today. And just to say that Dr. Anton Janse van Rensburg is a practicing medical doctor from Pretoria with 27 years experience as an integrative practitioner. He has served as a wellness coach to top leadership in organizations across South Africa, and has authored and co-authored 2 books and regularly presents on a variety of platforms with a particular interest in medicinal cannabis, the human microbiome, and the medical applications of noble metals. So Dr. Anton Janse van Rensburg, welcome to the podcast, and so grateful to have you on our podcast today.
Thank you, everyone. Good day to your listeners. Thank you for having me.
Anton, if we can just start off, and I'll start off by saying that cannabis has been around for centuries, but only recently have we begun to understand its potential benefits and its risks through modern science. From managing chronic pain to treating epilepsy, cannabis is being explored as a therapy in ways that many of us never imagined. So, Anton, can we maybe kick off here, and can you briefly share your journey as to what led you to specialize in medicinal cannabis?
Everyone, I think my journey has been one that it started with my own father having an incurable disease back in 1984, 1985. And that already sparked my interest in what else is there that we don't know about. And I think that maybe is the foundation of my interest, not just in medicinal cannabis, but in noble metals and all the other things that you mentioned there. And so it was a natural progression for me that when the legislation changed in South Africa, that SAHPRA, or the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, I'm not going to say the whole acronym again, so I've now said it, so now we can just refer to SAHPRA from now onwards. When the government changed the law and said, you know what, now formally, correctly, doctors can prescribe medicinal cannabis. So I very quickly got involved in coaching doctors, well, first coaching myself, training, studying, and then becoming involved in the field.
Right. Thanks for, it seems like it's been quite a journey, and thanks for sharing that with us. And I'm sure you've experienced this as well in your journey, but to understand, but how does, and we can just start up front with this, because I'm sure this is on a lot of our listeners' minds, how does the medical use of cannabis differ from recreational use?
Okay, that's a long piece of string, but I'm going to summarize it in a very nice short summary. It differs because now doctors are prescribing product that was produced at facilities that have to produce the right certification. So there's control over where you are getting this from. So as a medical doctor, I don't want to prescribe something that's going to harm my patient. So in South Africa, SAHPRA actually has teams that investigate and inspect the farms that produce it. They inspect the factories that do the extractions. So I think that's the first big point. that needs to be highlighted.
Right.
And we'll get into why that is so important, because what people don't understand about cannabis as a plant is that the plant can actually carry a few fungal infections, and it can actually be carry a high burden of heavy metals. So you want it to be carefully produced, number one. Number two, the big difference is we use microdose in medicine. So I don't send my patient home and say, you know what, here are 10 joints, smoke a joint every day. You know, good luck to you.
Yes.
Don't do that.
Yes.
It's tiny, tiny dosages, because I want, and we'll get into this just now, I want to activate the endocannabinoid receptors in the human body to do what they're supposed to do. And then maybe thirdly, people think it would be incredibly expensive. Actually, not so much. The oils, maybe when they import it, they're expensive. But when you start looking at some of the oils that are being produced locally, the price is coming down. So it's actually not even that expensive anymore when compared to what we call street cannabis.
Right. And I think that leads us on to how does cannabis work in the body? And I'm going to particularly say that my understanding in terms of reading, and I've been asked some questions around about this, there's CBD and THC. You can tell me if I'm correct with that. There are both compounds found in cannabis that have very different effects. What are we referring to here?
Okay, so to understand cannabis, you have to understand that the plant contains more than 500 medicinal components. It's probably the plant that has the most medicinal components jammed into a single plant on the planet. And I'm very passionate about medicinal plants. There are many more that we can talk about.
Yes.
But the medicinal components are the cannabinoids, like THC and CBD, which are now the famous ones. But there are many others. There are more than 100, and they keep on identifying more and more cannabinoids. Then you get terpenes. Now, when you walk up to any plant, a tree, and you rub the leaves between your fingers and you smell it, what do you smell? You smell a beautiful aromatic flavor. You are smelling a terpene, and terpenes are medicinal. You can look at lemon. Limonene is a terpene. It's medicinal, but it also occurs in the cannabis plant. And all of this then works together in the human body. I mean, there's still other things like flavonoids and antioxidants in the plant, but the major medicinal effect is from the cannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system. So, Avron, could I maybe elaborate on the endocannabinoid system quickly?
Please.
Okay. When you are born, you drink mother's milk, and that's the first time that you consume cannabis. Now, I know my listeners may be frowning now. How on earth is that possible? It is because all of you produce daily your own inside cannabinoids, which means that we have a system in our bodies that need cannabinoids or cannabis. Now, cannabis refers to exogenous cannabis or phyto plant cannabinoids. Now, your mother produces cannabinoids. She puts it in her breast milk. You drink it as a baby, and it calms you. The main cannabinoid in breast milk, anandamide, it's from the old Sanskrit language, means bliss. You can see it on a baby's face when they've had breast milk.
Yes.
But in the same way, we are supposed to have a homeostasis with our endocannabinoid system, but that homeostasis can become out of balance. And obviously, on the one hand, people who have good nutrition and live a healthy life, they've got a good endocannabinoid production. But many of us at a point will need phytocannabinoids, and what we get from cannabis, to carefully service these receptors. You've got millions of these receptors in your body, and they are cannabinoid receptors. And that's why the phytocannabinoids then in such a small quantity has a remarkable effect for certain conditions.
Right. So can I simplify this for our listeners in a way to say that we've got CBD, that's the cannabinoids, right? That is what we're talking about here. not the THC, which the THC, the way I understand, that causes the high effects, if I can put that in inverted commas.
Can I interject there? So
Please.
THC and CBD are cannabinoids, but
Right.
THC is the psychoactive cannabinoid that when you take lots of it,
Fine.
but in microdose, the THC is the most powerful medicinal cannabinoid. So the medicines that us doctors prescribe definitely contain both. That's why, we'll get to this later, why the process is so regulated by SAHPRA.
Fine. That explains it, and thank you for that. So how, and let's go on to this question, how is the dosing of medicinal cannabis, which we're talking about CBD and THC predominantly here, as I would understand it, determined compared to, say, the traditional pharmaceuticals?
Okay. So it's a very unique process. I wish I could do this with most pharmaceuticals, and I think some people do it. It's like, being prescribed a sleeping tablet that's in an easily breakable tablet form. What do you do with it? Well, sometimes you are prescribed a sleeping tablet for the first time and you think to yourself, I don't want to take the whole tablet. How about I take a quarter? Right. So what are you doing at this moment? You are doing something called titration. Now, when you titrate, means tonight I take this, tomorrow I may take 2 quarters, I take a half. Oh, it's working. So you end up taking the least amount of that product possible. Now, with cannabis as medicine or medicinal cannabis, we have a mantra. We say, you start low, you go slow, and you remain low, which means I give you an oil to help you sleep at night. First night, 2 drops. Third night, 3 drops, then 4 drops. And then the moment you sleep, we say, stop there. That's your dose. So that we remain in the domain of microdosing. But now the nice scientific term for this is titration. You build up the dose.
Yes.
And that's where it differs dramatically from typical mainstream medicine.
And would that be how SAHPRA approaches it in South Africa in terms of when they're starting to regulate and register these compounds, that they would work on the microdosing and recommend the titration from the lowest doses possible?
So SAHPRA doesn't get involved in dosing whatsoever. They look at the patient's condition. They look at the reasons that the doctor provides for the particular product that the doctor wants to give, and they leave it up to the doctor to determine the titration.
Fine. So then that, I think, leads into, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners are questioning now, and the knowledge that they're looking for on this. What are the most evidence-based uses of medicinal cannabis today?
Okay, so the list is getting longer and longer, but I'll give you the top group, and also I'll blend in where most of the prescriptions are happening in South Africa. So one of the tops, and I'm not going to say top and then second or third, because there's a whole list that actually lie next to each other. And I think the top one of the first top ones is pain. And ironically enough, or interestingly enough, neuropathic pain, nerve pain, has got tremendous amounts of research being published about how you can control nerve pain using phytocannabinoids, because the central nervous system has the most cannabinoid receptors. But all pain. So I've got quite a lot of patients with chronic pain that I use cannabis for, especially patients who want to get off the very addictive opioid pain medication. Because remember now, so we're going to have a very nice little discussion about how cannabis is not a gateway drug. It is actually the exit drug. So I exit my patients off opioids, which are way more addictive than cannabis. Everyone make a note. We'll talk about the addictiveness of cannabinoids. So pain's big, but all kinds of pain, not just neuropathic pain. Then insomnia. Insomnia is a tremendously big category of very addictive drugs being prescribed. Benzodiazepine, non-benzodiazepine, sedatives. These drugs are highly addictive. So I use cannabis as the exit drug to get patients off those medicines, and the patients wake up feeling refreshed, especially if they stick to my prescription of micro dosing. Then anxiety. So in microdose, cannabis works very well for people that have a generalized anxiety disorder, then movement disorders, patients with multiple sclerosis, for example, patients with Parkinson's. I've had people approach me when cannabis became decriminalized in our country. Some of the first patients that approached me were people that were buying black market cannabis to smoke it so that they can walk. They were patients with such severe multiple sclerosis or conditions like that, where their legs would shake and they've got no control over their legs. Same with Parkinson's. And they would take a single drag from a joint and they would be able to walk for a good 2 to 3 hours after that. I mean, it's a life-changing intervention.
Wow, that is life-changing, right?
So you can just imagine that when it was decriminalized, they immediately came to my office and said, we just desperately want to get off this stuff that we're buying from who knows who, and we could put them into a proper legal process through SAHPRA and get them safe product. And then just to name a few, palliative care, patients who have severe nausea because of their chemotherapy. I have yet to encounter a substance that takes nausea away as effectively as medicinal cannabis. So my patients on chemotherapy, even my patients end-of-life care, who don't want to be sleeping all the time because of the morphine and all those heavy medications, we put them on cannabis and they can be lucid, they can spend time with their families, and they cannot have nausea. And then there's a few others, but they all branch out from these big branches. You know, we've got some fibromyalgia patients that are doing very well, and fibromyalgia is a big deal. It's a big, actually, some of the researchers in America regard fibromyalgia, they call it an endocannabinoid deficiency. It's actually quite interesting that they would call it that. And there's many more conditions that slowly but surely are being added to the list. And SAHPRA, because I was there at the beginning, some of the first applications came from us. They are starting to also recognize the research, and they've actually got quite a crack team handling medicinal cannabis.
That's amazing to hear, Anton. So it seems to me you're talking about pain and neuromuscular conditions predominantly. I've seen some research around epilepsy. Is that correct? Have you treated any patients with epilepsy?
Yeah, so that's the sixth big leg that I want to talk about. That's usually CBD. So that's where we give very, very small dosages of THC, and in children, depending on availability, we give a pure CBD, but we call it broad spectrum. So we don't give CBD isolates. Us doctors prefer to still prescribe the whole plant. I want the benefit of the whole plant, but I want the THC component to be removed. And I have seen nothing but near miraculous turnarounds in some severe seizure-related conditions. Because not all seizure-related conditions, just epilepsy. We've got Dravet syndrome, we've got Lennox-Gastaut, and I think one of my most remarkable stories is a Lennox-Gastaut patient. She's 22, who was having 200 seizures a day. 200.
Wow.
Of which 4 were the major ones, the grand mal, and then the other 190 odd were petit mal seizures. And within 2 to 3 weeks, we got her down to 15 seizures a day.
Right. Amazing. I mean, that's just wondrous in terms of, you and I, from a medical practitioner, understand epilepsy and how difficult it is to treat. So that is incredible. Anton, are there any areas where cannabis shows promise, but we still need more evidence? They're like the big upcoming areas, just to whet our listeners' appetites.
Yes. So Tourette's, you could also say maybe, links to a bit of an involuntary movement disorder, and also autism. Quite a bit of research being done in Israel. There's quite a crack bunch of doctors there. Well, one of the fathers of cannabis research, Professor Mechulam, was actually an Israeli. He passed away, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago. And he was actually the person that identified some of the major cannabinoids in the 1960s and 1970s. So there's still quite a culture of research in Israel with regards to this, and also with autism. So I'm watching the autism research with a keen eye.
And tell me on ADHD and ADD, has there been any research in that area?
very
Right.
early. So I think many of your ADHD patients do well because it's calming, but and also, I mean, many of your autistic, your people on the autistic spectrum have got elements of ADD and ADHD. So I think there's a bit of an overlap there. So it seems that they benefit, but we need to wait a little while. It's like the same with cancer. The next thing I want to talk about is cancer. People are hoping that this is the miracle cure for any cancer, all cancers.
Yes.
And the short answer to that is yes and no. We know it works for certain cancers, but we cannot yet link a certain strain of cannabis to certain types of cancers.
Yes.
And we are worried that certain strains may make certain cancers worse. So I don't just willy-nilly prescribe cannabis to any cancer patient.
Of course not. Right.
I tried to see what was done, and I mean, we already have some lovely research. There's very much research happening at the moment on cancer, and it's international studies that are ongoing. There's great promise in leukemia, lymphoma, but it's too early. We'll still see where that goes.
And Anton, one other big area, which I'm just throwing this out there, and I have no idea if it's been used there or not, in terms of the metabolic disorders around the body. So I'm talking things like metabolic syndrome, diabetes, any of those type of disorders. Has there been any practical applications there or not really?
As an anti-inflammatory, Aaron.
Yes.
So because we know what's one of the biggest problems with metabolic syndrome is that they people who have metabolic syndrome or who have metabolic well compromised metabolically, they have inflammation. So this helps from that perspective.
Okay. And we know a lot of the diseases and research now that's coming out is around this inflammation, right? Chronic inflammation is the big buzzword.
That's it.
And what you're saying is that there's potential research and data coming out in terms of the effects of chronic inflammation. So I think that is very interesting and something we need to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Oh, yeah, very fascinating.
Exactly. I think for a first episode, just to give listeners sort of the background, what are the uses, what is it, and I think was a very good intro for our listeners.
And what are we going to cover in part 2?
So part 2, we're really going to look actually how do you dose it?
Okay.
What are the side effects? What are the actual conditions that one can use it for? Costs, and I suppose, and what's the future of medicinal cannabis in South Africa?
It'll be great. So that we'll listen to in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks' time. If we think back to our last episode, we spoke about rewards programs.
Yes.
We spoke about loyalty programs and how medical aids use them for their clients. And we saw, we were of the opinion that if you stay engaged on their program, there's lots of benefits. But the biggest thing that we left out, because there was so much content, what is TRA doing in that space? So let's go back to 2 weeks ago. Let's look at a snippet of what we discussed around that topic, and we'll see what TRA is doing in that space.
Excellent.
So, what exactly is the TRA Assist program? It's simply a value add program run via a mobile app that gives you access to a whole lot of services and benefits.
Warren, if I could just chip in terms of the TRA program, it's designed directly to benefit members. There's no gimmick to it or feel good. It's a benefit that gives you in return what you require, what you need at a point in time.
Sure.
And I think key value adds, right?
Key value adds.
Yeah.
Because there's things like a panic button.
Yes.
So you as a policyholder are in a situation that you need assistance, you can press the panic button.
Yeah.
There's the home drive benefit where you would perhaps need some sort of transport, either in your own vehicle, you're not able to drive your own vehicle for whatever reason, or you're just stuck without wheels effectively. You're able to press the button and have access to that. And particularly in South Africa, things like Road Guard, where if you're waiting for a lift and there's we know the element of crime, unfortunately, that exists, you'll have a security guard waiting with you while you're waiting for assistance. So those are all
direct
tangible
benefits.
things, And then some of our policyholders ask, are there limits to this sort of thing? I mean, naturally, you can't. If we're offering home drives, and one of our benefits is the proper Uber service, you can't offer unlimited Uber rides. We know what that costs, but so our policyholders are limited to a certain number of of drives. But I think that makes sense in terms of how you administer the.
Yeah, exactly. If you know
program.
you have X number of home drives,
Sure.
you're right. And I mean, this is for emergency,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Right. It's not just for your average going out.
Well, you could use it.
you
for
could
that,
use
but,
it, but then you must know that there's a limit.
yeah, sure. We suggest that you do be responsible with it, and that's why there are the limits on it. And it's also limited. You're not going to be able to do a Cape to Cairo type journey
Sure.
using our Uber services. It's really for the inner cities, 50 k's radius within the major cities. So you've got to have those sort of limitations in it to make sense for it to be financially to make financial sense with our
And
policy.
Warren, for me as a medical person, the nurse benefit, which
Sure.
we have, is a really significant benefit.
Absolutely. So you got access to that. Sure. You got access to that team of nurses, but not only for just medical questions, also for trauma.
Mm.
We know the prevalence of trauma.
Sure.
We've discussed this in previous podcasts.
Yes, sure.
There's mental health issues. There's
Sure.
trauma going around. So part of being a TRA policyholder is that you can access this the trauma team, for those times when you need it.
I think it sounds like an outstanding offering, an excellent value add, and that it really speaks to what's actually required.
Sure.
All these benefits are designed to take inconvenience away from our members.
It's making things easier for you as a policyholder. Well, that's it. I mean, you can see through our TRA Assist mobile app, we're offering great value for our policyholders. And I think that puts us on the front foot and gives us an advantage over a lot of what's happening in the market.
Very much targeted towards the member. Also brings about great savings. If you just think about the Uber benefit, it saves you a lot of money. And there's some real value, and it's designed that way to make sure that we give back to members.
Sure.
I mean, for me, you often see a lot of these loyalty programs, which they're just lots of benefits. But if you actually focus in on the benefits, the actual benefits that the TRA loyalty program, they're very meaningful and very value adding. I think it's an outstanding loyalty program. And it's amazing that the TRA members get access to it.
Very much so.
I think that's a great way to sort of end this episode. We've spoken about the benefits of this natural way of healing, and we've looked at the benefits for TRA policyholders if they use the mobile app. So I think great way to end the episode, and we can't wait for the next.
Sure, but just before we do that, we do want to ask our listeners, right? We're going to put the email address.
Correct. Yes.
And if you've got any comments on the episode or information or questions or other topics you'd like to covered, I'd like to ask our listeners just to please interact with us. Let us know. We'd love to have their comments on the email address which you're posting now.
Yeah, very much so, Doc. This program is for you, or the podcast is for you to ensure that it's informative, it's educational, and it adds value to your life. And that's the intention that we have at TRA on this podcast.
Right. Absolutely. So until the next episode.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.
Don't stress, the gap is covered. Well, there we go. Thank you to the TRA team and to you for watching the Inside Track. Until next time, bye for now.